So
it's not heresy.
It's Harrison.
Wow! They gave us nothing but tradition and no argument. All they did was get on this stage, yell real loud, and set a straw man on fire.
Okay, I was not impressed.
Respectfully, that sounds like a little bit of a dodge.
I'm claiming victory.
Where I come from, extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. Why is this so difficult?
This is the first word.
Rumors. There was a rumor, not that Matt Chisholm is a flat earther, but there's a rumor that was spread on the Bible Brodown that Jonathan Pritchett spreads the rumor that Matt Chisholm is a flat earther. I have not spread the rumor that he is a flat earther. I have talked about his fascination with ancient aliens, and we make fun of it on our program, but I want to make this abundantly clear. Matt Chisholm is not a flat earther.
Okay, so we were going to talk today about a particular issue. So let's go ahead and start talking a little bit about that. Yesterday, when we were discussing what we would do the show on today, we were talking about the nature of truth.
Yes.
And Pritchett got to thinking, I wonder if there are any actually meaningful arguments brought by opponents of the absolute theory of truth out there.
Theory.
The objective truth exists. And so we got to digging around and really didn't find anything.
Nothing good.
But it's an opportunity for us to talk a little bit about truth. There are various theories about the nature of truth. There is the coherence theory,
yes.
Correspondence theory.
Yes.
Most of us would, especially those of us who are Christians, would affirm a correspondence theory. In fact, most people probably affirm a correspondence theory.
Yes, if it corresponds with reality, it's true.
Yeah, correspondence theory says, well, let's go in reverse order. So what is coherence theory? The coherence theory, depending on the theory, may say something like, if something is coherent, it's true. Okay, that I think it's true that whatever is true is going to be coherent, but it being coherent itself is not enough. So, for example, the Lord of the Rings universe is known for being incredibly coherent. Now, I don't know that that's true, but let's just imagine for a second that every detail that Tolkien was so good that there's not one single internal contradiction in the Lord of the Rings universe. Now, there probably is. If we really took the time to go through it, we could probably find something. But let's imagine that it was perfect. Does that mean that Middle Earth actually exists?
No.
Of course not. So coherence alone is not good enough. You need correspondence as well. And what we mean with correspondence is that, like Dr. Pritchett said, what is true is what corresponds to reality, which is almost a tautology to those of us who take the theory. It's like you're saying it's true if it's true.
Yeah, now,
right?
now, Christians have argued since people have been doing epistemology and framing it up these ways that the Bible itself presupposes this kind of correspondence theory.
Yeah.
And I agree with that.
Yeah. Well, there's
They
some
weren't
things
talking
that
about
people
things
don't
that-
have to, until we got to later centuries where people became dum-dums, nobody had to say that.
Right.
It seemed obvious and intuitive, right? Yeah. So we take a correspondence theory. Now, that doesn't mean that coherence is not important, as I've been trying to say too. Whatever is true and corresponds to reality is going to be coherent.
Yeah.
So what do we mean by coherent, Dr. Pritchett?
That it's not just nonsensical or irrational is what we mean.
Yeah, a simple way of thinking about it is there are no contradictions.
Right.
There's nothing in it that's contradictory.
Or chaotic, to where there's absolute. I mean, not that there's not chaos in the universe, but chaotic in the sense that it could be random and change at any given point without, pre-warning or anything.
Yeah.
Like all of a sudden gravity stops working for 15 minutes and then it just kicks on again. And then,
that makes me think about whenever I was a kid and we would go to the Southern Baptist Convention because my father was a pastor. We'd go to the Southern Baptist Convention every year, and we went to Houston. One year it was in Houston. And so my brother and I, because he could drive at the time, we went to the to NASA. And I was so excited because my brother had told me that they have an anti-gravity room at NASA in Houston because that's where the astronauts prepare for space.
Is that where they shot Armageddon? That scene in Armageddon?
Maybe. Yeah. There's not actually an anti-gravity room.
Oh.
Were you under the impression there was actually an anti-gravity room?
I thought there was this thing in the movie Armageddon where they go into this big chamber and something
If
happens.
there really is an anti-gravity room, then we should know about that. But I don't think there is. I think the way they film movies and stuff is they go up into a plane and the plane goes up and down.
No, that's
in
a
higher
parabolic
atmosphere.
plane
Yeah.
deal.
Yeah.
Parabolic dives. No, I'm talking about that. Number one, a lot of times they practice underwater, but there was that other thing in the movie Armageddon that was supposed to be, at NASA to where it was, I don't know. You don't remember that scene? They never filmed them inside the thing, but they filmed them going in and said that's all we can do.
Oh, okay. No, I don't remember that. But all I've ever seen is people going underwater in a big swimming pool to learn how to do low gravity stuff. But
Okay.
the bottom line is whether or not the NASA thing corresponds to reality, if it does correspond to reality, if there is an anti-gravity room, there won't be anything contradictory about that room.
Okay.
Right? Okay. So does anybody have any questions okay, do we have souls? Did Jesus have a soul? Because reasons. Okay, Nick Quint asks.
Yes, he was in every way human, and so yes, he did have a soul, and it was not like the divine part of Jesus made up the human, so he had a fully human soul insofar as humans have souls.
Yeah.
Not that he was a physical body in which a divine soul inhabited him. He's fully human and fully God, so his soul would be like our soul insofar as being fully human. Yes, because he was fully man.
Yeah. Okay, so
Now, if you don't believe man has a soul, if you're a physicalist for whatever dumb reason, makes you think that people don't have souls, then you're going to say that Jesus didn't have a soul.
yeah.
But we're not physicalists
That's
because
right.
there's zero good reasons to be physicalist.
Okay, so let's talk about physicalism for just a minute, because even though our audience, many of them have heard this a lot, we have a lot of new people lately. So
Yeah.
let's go ahead and talk about it. Perhaps some of you wonder why Dr. Pritchett has a box sitting in front of him all the time that says prime on it. Maybe you don't know what that's all about, or when he says something snarky, people call him Pritchett Prime. The reason for that is because a few years ago, Dr. Pritchett and I were talking about this very issue. And we were talking about Ray Kurzweil, who is famous for inventing the Kurzweil keyboard that you sometimes see in churches or other events. And he also pioneered the voice recognition technology that's on your phone. He wrote a book called The Age of Spiritual Machines that I read, and in that book, he's hoping that we can use MRI technology to map the human brain and then copy it on an artificial neural net. And then what his hope is that then your consciousness will transfer to that artificial neural net.
And you reject the claim that that's possible.
I think it's intuitively and obviously false.
Yeah.
Because, and this is where Pritchett Prime came in, I said, let's imagine we've got Pritchett here, and this is Pritchett Actual. Mm-hmm. And we've built this artificial neural net and this android that is Pritchett Prime. I originally said Pritchett 1, so yes, Pritchett actually did name himself. He said, we'll call it Pritchett Prime.
See? Intelligence.
So then I said, okay, so you've got this Pritchett Prime over here that has all of Pritchett Actual's memories, all of his experiences. He'll remember getting married and having children and everything. He'll even remember the moments before the experiment was carried out.
Like the Michael Keaton movie.
And if it worked, let's imagine it works, all of that would be true, and the robot Pritchett would actually claim to be the real Pritchett Actual, he'd claim to be it. I won't say believe it because that implies that he's self-aware, but he would claim to be Pritchett. The problem is Pritchett Actual is still standing over here looking across at Pritchett Prime going, no, that thing is demonic. That's not
Right.
me. Kill it now. Okay, so this idea that you could create this other thing that is exactly a copy of the first thing, and then that would be the first thing, that the original person, doesn't work. Well, on Christian physicalism, the idea, and they admit a fair amount of mystery here, and some of the reasons that they give and explanations of how it could possibly work philosophically are really quite silly. And we have a video that is available only to patrons that goes into some of those different things. But the idea is here. Yeah, I wanted to go into detail about it, Nick. I see Nick saying you don't have to go into detail. We love going into detail.
Yeah,
about
we haven't started
I understand
making
why
fun of it
you
yet.
don't want me to go
Right.
into detail about it.
Yeah, we haven't gotten to making fun of it yet.
Yeah. But the idea is, so if you die and you're so Christian physicalists just believe we don't have an immaterial soul.
Like atheists.
Yeah. Well, that's true.
Guilt by association fallacy.
So-
just like atheists and naturalists and people who don't believe that God exists at all and are terrible people. No, I'm just kidding. But they believe that you're just a bag of meat.
You're just a physical body.
Yes.
Now, they might object to me saying just, but that's what they're saying. So then the question there is, what happens at the resurrection? So since we only have a Pritchett actual, let's say that Pritchett actual, Jonathan Pritchett sitting next to me, dies. His body decays and goes back to the dust of the earth. If there is no immaterial soul that continues on, then whenever the resurrection happens, and God it's not a resurrection really, it's a recreation. Now you can drown it in theological language and call it a resurrection, but it's a recreation of that physical structure, that brain, all those things. And in that sense, it's not a resurrection. That is a copy of the original. Yes. But in what sense is that still the same conscious experience of Pritchett?
Yeah.
Now, if you want to say that the conscious experience was somehow transferred immaterially to the new Pritchett body, then you're just saying that there's an immaterial soul.
Right. Now, Nancy Murphy, I think that was her name, Nancy Murphy.
Yeah.
She tried to argue that, well, maybe God can preserve the data from this brain cell or something.
That's not good enough.
Brainstem.
The data from the brain cell is like copying your brain and putting it on an artificial neural net.
Or it can preserve the actual thing, which I don't see that being...
If there's an actual thing that can be transferred that's not natural, then that's a soul.
Or the natural thing can be preserved somehow by God in a special something.
Yeah, and it actually gets worse.
But now you're going the wrong way with Occam's razor. You know, you're making it more complicated than it needs to be, I think, with this idea that you're preserving stuff, because the Maccabean martyrs, for example, they wondered what would happen. You know, people wondered what would happen. These people are basically burnt alive and reduced to ash, right? Mm-hmm. What gets resurrected? And the answer from secular Judaism was, well, yeah, God can still recreate that person. Don't worry about martyrs who are burnt alive and reduced to ash.
Yeah.
Because we all go back to dust.
Right.
Right? I mean, go open a casket.
Our physical bodies.
Right. I mean, to dust you shall return. So, whoa, our studio's falling apart.
Go ahead.
What is...
to dust you shall return.
Right. So... The simplest and best explanation is substance dualism. Yeah. And that there is an immaterial aspect to you that God places into your resurrected body at the new heavens and earth. So
yeah, that's right.
I think Christian physicalism is like people thinking, well, what can we talk about that's different? And so they come up with this.
Well, my biggest problem with it is the continuity issue. Right. It really is. And, you know, even some of the physicalists that I know, and I don't want to name them, and I'm not talking about Nick Quint alone, I don't want to name these people because I don't know if they're okay with me saying what we've said in private conversations. But one well-known Christian physicalist said to me about the biblical data. I said, so are you a physicalist because you believe that the Bible teaches it? And he said, yeah. And I said, so would that be you think that the Bible really does indicate? And he said, I think the biblical data could go either way.
Right. That's what I think too.
So if the biblical data could go either way, then we're left with like if we call that neutral and set it aside, we're left with the philosophical arguments. And the biggest problem that I have with it aside that I don't know that the Bible could go either way.
Well,
is that is the continuity of identity issue that we've been discussing? How is it that I am the same me across different stratas of physical bodies if nothing transfers?
Well, here's why I think it could go either way. If you can insist that you don't have to posit a substance for every vocabulary for life or whatever else, because what they'll argue is, okay, so the blood cries out from the earth. Is that its own ontological substance beyond just... So what they're going to say is every time you say, if you say heart, soul, mind, and strength, now is the proverbial heart is now that
No, but you don't have to do that. You can go
right. No, I'm saying this is how they argue. I'm not saying this is how.
Well, yeah, but they're
don't
arguing
mistake me for their team. I'm not on their team.
If they argued that, they'd be arguing against one of the weaker forms of it. Now, let me go to a difficult passage, and that is where Samuel comes up out of the witch of Endor conjures up this. Is it really him? Is it not really him?
Yeah.
If it is really him, are we to imagine that his physical body crawled up, or was this a spirit?
Yeah.
And here's another problem with this whole ball of wax.
People thought that Jesus was a ghost, so I mean, obviously they had a concept of.
Well, right. And they thought that was just Here's the problem with this whole thing is we already know that disembodied spirits do exist. If you're any kind of Christian, it's system dependent because God himself is spirit, right? So you've already got at least one spiritual being without a physical body. So why is it a stretch at all to posit that we have a spiritual aspect? Dylan Simmons asked a question a moment ago.
We're doing terrible at keeping it.
Well, it's on this little tiny screen. Yeah. For those of you who are just joining, we are doing a live stream, and not a live stream really, but kind of, on Pritchett's phone because something wasn't working right on the computer version.
In your debate with Matt, you began... I'm not reading this for the people who can read it. I'm reading it for you.
Okay.
In your debate with Matt, you began to question whether he believed in determinism or free will. It seemed as if you had a whole line of questioning for either position he held to, if he would have affirmed one or the other. What were you going to say if he said free will? What were you going to ask him if he said determinism?
So people are probably sick of this topic now, but I'll answer the question. So I had two premises. Premise one, if God does not exist, then libertarian freedom does not exist. Premise two, libertarian freedom does exist, therefore God exists. So all I was trying to do, I knew that in the past he had affirmed compatibilism, which is determinism, as we all know, but I wanted the audience to hear it all. But if he had somehow changed I wasn't aware of it and had said, oh no, I've changed recently and I do affirm libertarian free will, then what that would have done is made my argument even stronger, or it wouldn't affect the strength of the argument, but it would make it easier to talk to him about it, because premise two would be conceded, basically.
Yeah.
Because premise two is that libertarian freedom does exist. So what I'm trying to do in asking him what he affirms is to figure out which of these premises is going to get the most action. Since he disaffirmed premise two, since he didn't believe we had libertarian freedom. Oh, I'm sorry. He didn't disaffirm premise two. He said, I don't know, even though we all know he clearly affirms determinism and compatibilism. And that's an interesting part of the debate, because he kept trying to say, well, I'm just saying, how could you ever know? How could you ever know? And so I'm not asking that. I'm asking, what do you affirm?
Yeah.
But for those who know his deal, they know that what he was trying to do there was to never shoulder any burden of proof. Because if he said, I affirm determinism, then I could have easily, and I wasn't even going to do this, but I could have easily said to him, prove to me that determinism is true. Why should I believe determinism is true? But to answer the question, all I was trying to do is figure out and let the audience know he affirms determinism. He doesn't affirm libertarian freedom. If he did affirm libertarian freedom, then premise two is conceded, and all we have to do is focus on premise one. Because he didn't do that, we never got to premise one. We only stuck with premise two. And I don't think that he ever said anything that substantially knocked down premise two. So
yeah. debating opponents who won't take any positions on anything because they know that somebody can have some sort of criticism that you may not be able to answer. It is a little bit cowardly, in my opinion.
Well, the thing about it is, why are you debating? I mean, there were a lot of atheists that say...
No, I know why he's debating. He wants to show that we don't have reasons to believe in most of the things that we believe in. We don't have sufficient reason. And that's his shtick. That's what he wants to communicate to the audience.
That's fine, but be a lecturer. If you're going to debate, you need to take a position. And if you're saying, I don't know, and a lot of the atheists were saying, but that's the honest position, is to just say, I don't know. Okay, you're right. That is honest. If you really don't know, if you genuinely don't know, then that's fine. That's honest to say, I don't know. But then why are you standing on this stage with me right now is the question.
Brian asks a good question. He has wondered how we actually addressed this in the Prime episode. I believe in the soul, but I've often wondered how the concept of the soul would work in the transporter on Star Trek. Can a soul go through a pattern buffer? The answer is Star Trek killed their cast members every episode when they stepped into a transporter.
Don't they bring up better topics to talk about than what we talk about?
Yeah. All you find in Star Trek is just the slaughter of people on a regular basis and re-put together.
I mean, yeah.
Because once you... The pattern buffer basically reduces you to the most finest of particles, right? And then reassembles you wherever your destination is. And we argue that kills you, and whatever's reassembled is a copy, and the soul's gone.
That's what I think, but I don't think I could be dogmatic about. I don't think I could be dogmatic about Star Trek. How's that? I don't think I could be dogmatic about
if it were,
because it is exactly the same physical matter, right?
Yes.
That went in, that comes out the other side on the planet or on the ship. And in what sense does the soul
supervene on the body?
Yeah. But I'll tell you this: if I was on the Starship Enterprise, can you board the ship manually, or do you have to transport onto the ship?
Seriously, you asked this question? Okay, there's a shuttle bay.
Okay,
there's hatches everywhere. What are you talking about?
But I mean, when it was first built, if I got on or if I boarded via a shuttle, I'm not going on that transporter.
You're not?
Because I do in my bones believe that
Star
Captain
Trek,
Kirk was a completely different Captain Kirk by the end of the series than he was at the beginning. Yeah, so, but that brings up another interesting question related to the nature of the soul. Yeah. And that is, what was it? I had it just in a moment ago. Oh, yeah. So if we're saying on physicalism, you're a completely different person after the transport, because even though it's the same physical matter, we have no reason to believe that the immaterial soul transferred. All right, here's the thing. So when they say, now I don't know this to be true, but everybody says it, and I've never heard it contested, that every 7 to 10 years, every cell in your body cycles out and you have new cells.
Yeah.
Okay, that means that you have a completely different physical body than you did 10 years ago, if that's true. So on Christian physicalism, how is that the same person that continues? Now, they would say it is.
Because it's a gradual thing.
You go ahead.
You're not 100% replaced every 7 years. It's a little bit from here and a little bit from there over time. And by that 7-year period, you've gone through a phasing, but it's not necessarily all at once. So there's still...
You have to have a
new
physical...
mixed with the old. It's not,
Right. Yeah. You have to... It's like you have a... I forget the terminology they use, but there is a physical causal connection between the new and the old, like a handing off.
Right.
Okay, that's because of that commitment to that. Some people, and I don't remember, I went through this all last summer. I don't remember the names of the people that wrote the journal articles. I know Glenn Peoples on his podcast does a bunch on this. But some of the theories of how this works is that with the resurrection is that when you die, invisibly, your body is replaced at the point of death with a different physical body.
Yeah. And
even though it's invisible and no one sees it, there's like a transporter. There's like an exchanging of cells instantly and invisibly, so that now you're same physical body is, I guess, with the Lord or whatever. I'm not making this up. You can go read this stuff, and that to me is absurd.
Yeah.
There's no evidence for it. And all this to get around. And I think I know what happened. They're like, well, these Greek philosophical ideas impacted Christian thinking such that now we've got this idea of the immaterial soul. No, Christianity already had a disembodied, as I said earlier, non-physical spiritual father, God the Father. Yeah. And your attempt to try to get away from all things Greco-Roman in order to avoid this is only making it impossible to have any kind of logical explanation of the continuity of identity.
And we've talked about that before, that by the first century, that's all a big mishmash of ideas, whether there's no pure Jewish thought versus pure Greek thought. That's all one big milieu.
So Nick is trying to get us away from this topic by asking a question
but I want to answer that
you
question.
should answer. How should a seminary foster an atmosphere of intellectual and theological freedom? Let me set this up. This probably comes on the heels of a poll that you recently created that said something like, if professors have to sign a very detailed set of doctrinal positions, it makes it very difficult for them to think freely and freely express their opinions. And I'll say this.
Or deal fairly with contrary data to their position.
And I'll say that when we go to get the consensus of scholars on a particular issue, we almost have to discount them because we can't know that their opinions aren't tainted by the doctrinal statement, right?
Yeah. Oh, and of course, there's a spectrum to this, okay? So if you are at Westminster Theological Seminary, obviously there's one thing that you have to affirm, right? You can't think outside of those parameters. Whereas like a Southern Baptist seminary, it's a broader doctrinal statement. The Baptist Faith and Message. Well, some of the seminaries have more detailed statements and stuff. So like David Allen, his job doesn't depend on whether or not he affirms limited atonement or unlimited atonement, general atonement. He can affirm both and still keep his job, right? So David Allen is reliable on that because you can find. So if you're teaching at a General Baptist college or seminary, they're obligated to affirm a general atonement, right? So you check that guy's work against someone like David Allen, who's not obligated to do it, right? But different seminaries have different parameters. But I think if you have any parameters beyond the essentials of the historic doctrine, you're going to come into some issues where Mike Licona hasn't said names, but he has publicly said quite often that he knows of scholars who bury their research because they don't want to lose their job at certain seminaries. I think as far as theological freedom and academic, it depends on what kind of seminary you are. Liberal seminary, you can basically affirm everything, including they'll have some conservatives there, like a token conservative or two. Now, Trinity is not the kind of institution where if you deny the bodily resurrection, you can work here. But Trinity, I think, has a very minimal doctrinal statement where it's basically 3 creeds and then about 10 or 11 points that kind of restates what you would find in the creeds anyway. So I think a minimal mere Christianity sort of statement allows for the most theological freedom without being irresponsible. Because I think it is irresponsible to let historically conservative Orthodox institutions fall to liberalism. Because the mission of this is not to train people who don't believe in the resurrection of Jesus. The mission of this church is to train people who proclaim the bodily resurrection of Jesus. Yeah. So there are some. It's not like Trinity has so much academic freedom that you can be anything and teach here.
Yeah.
But it is. I think Trinity is probably the most free academic environment for conservatism that you'll find anywhere. And I think the answer to Nick's question is the more minimal your doctrinal statement is, the more freedom you have within those confines of the doctrinal statement. Because every
sounds good.
Yeah. So
I think it's hilarious that
the more detailed the statement, the less freedom there is.
I think it's hilarious that there are a bunch of people sitting here watching that poster, basically, and that's all, and they're staying with us. But that's good. It's good for the show. So we have a couple more questions that I looked through. So Kendra wants to know, if there was a house fire and you had to save only 3 of your books, which of those would you save? And then there's a question from Russell Crawford, which was, have we ever experienced anything inexplicable and supernatural? So you start with the book question, and I'll answer, and then I'll start with the supernatural.
Okay, so thankfully, if I had a house fire, most of my best works are in my office. So the 3 books that I would save, the 3 books that I would save from the house would be, I would save my nice Douglas Adams trilogy, which is actually 5 books in 1 volume. Mm-hmm. I would save that because that's at home. Mm-hmm. I would probably save my wife's Bible, but my Bibles are here. Of course, I only use my phone for my Bible.
But you're not supposed to think that way. You're thinking that all books you own, including all Bibles. I don't think she wants to know about the Bibles. Obviously, you'd save the Bibles. But
no, I wouldn't. I would save my wife's Bible because I bought that for her as a gift.
Okay.
Right.
Take that. Okay, aside from that.
Well, I mean, I'd
what
say
3 books?
The Douglas Adams book.
Okay.
I would probably save our nice Edgar Allan Poe thing. It's like all his collections. It's one of those really nice Barnes and Noble ones. You know, I like it. And then I would save our Oxford Complete Works of Shakespeare that was also a gift to my wife. Now, all of these books are replaceable. Don't get me wrong. Mm-hmm. But
that's not. Let me augment her question.
Yeah.
You're on a desert island. You're going to be there forever, and you're going to die there. You only get 3 books, and the Bible isn't one of them. What books? There you go, Kendra. I know how to fix this.
So what are my top 3 favorite books of all time?
I'll tell you right now. Let me go ahead and answer since you're having trouble.
Okay.
The 3 books that I would save are these 3 right here for the camera. These 3 right here. This is the C.S. Lewis Space Trilogy. And the reason I would save those is because those books, probably more than any other book I own, are meaningful to me because Dr. Pritchett, I'm not saying this to be syrupy, it's true. Dr. Pritchett bought them for me last Christmas, and it meant a lot.
No, it's for your birthday.
And I would save those. And it's handy because they're in a box set, so it'd be easy to grab them. And there's 3 of them. So there you go.
I would probably grab.
I'm not sure they're interested enough for you to take this long.
Yeah.
Answering.
Yeah. See, I don't know. I know how to answer the other
so it'd
question.
be core facts, evangelistic apologetics, and death is a doorway.
No.
Okay.
I would probably save Plutarch's Lives off my shelf. I would probably save.
In case somebody else doesn't save them, we can't lose them to history.
Right. Well, now what would I want to sit around and read over and over again on a desert island?
Is that true?
Right?
Or
yeah,
are you,
it's fascinating and it's inexhaustible.
You really want to sit around? And
I would save. I know everyone hates Augustine. That's not a Calvin. Augustine's great. City of God. Yeah. I would save that
because you're the single. Because that's the only way you're connected to a city out there on a desert island, right?
Perhaps, but I mean, it's a good read. It's long, so it's gonna. And because of my dad, it has nothing to do with
a seafood cookbook. Somebody put a seafood cookbook.
Yeah, well, that would be help. That would be useful, but probably Don Quixote. Okay. Right, just because it would remind me of my dad, because one of my dad's favorite, not because he loved the book, but because he loved
windmills.
No, he loved sorry, Mom, Sophia Loren, but he loved The Man from La Mancha. Yeah, right. The movie. I don't know. Have you not seen it?
I don't think so.
What's wrong? You need to go see it.
Okay.
Anyway, so the book Don Quixote would remind me of my dad because he was a big fan of The Man.
All right, so let's move on to the next question. Yeah. So Russell Crawford asked, have you ever experienced anything inexplicably supernatural? I think I'm characterizing this right. And for me, the simple answer is not obviously so, no. But that said, the closest, I mean, it's all explainable. Mm-hmm. I can explain everything that I've experienced. But I have had these moments, and I've talked about this before, where there's been something really bad has happened in my life. At least on one occasion, something really bad happened. And in a moment of absolute and utter despair, there was this undeniable sense of the presence of God. Now, could a naturalist chalk that up to, a dopamine dump or something going on in my brain? Perhaps. But to me, I remember in that moment saying to myself, Braxton, remember the way you feel right now, because beyond all evidences, arguments, and everything else, you are certain, like Cartesian certainty in this moment, of the truth of not just God, but the truth of Jesus. And so it's not inexplicable, but I do believe it was supernatural. And for me, that's as close as it comes. I've never seen anything. And one of the reasons that I'm into apologetics is because I have struggled with doubt in the past, not so much anymore, but in the past. And I think that, I used to think when I would walk through a church sanctuary in the middle of the night alone, that is like the scariest place in the world, in the middle of a church sanctuary at night. And I used to worry, like, oh my gosh, what if I saw like something like a demon or something? And then I thought, you know what? If I saw something demonic, that would be the worst mistake the enemy ever made, because you talk about certainty. I mean, visual certainty. So maybe that's why it's never happened for me. But I've never had anything that was inexplicable and obviously undeniably supernatural, except for an internal awareness that a naturalist could explain, probably.
Well, I mean, that's the thing. The earth opens up and swallows the people at Korah, right?
Yes.
Now, you can explain what happened. Maybe an earthquake and the ground fell in or whatever.
Yeah.
But the timing of it is what gets your attention. So I don't know if there's... So when my dad passed away, we were in a hospice, okay? And we were all around him. We were all singing or whatever. And then when he finally just drew his last breath and died, okay? Now this hospice, the door to his room shut, okay? And then there was a room out to the outside, right, that had a heavy door with one of those you have to push in. There's like a bar across. Mm-hmm. You push in the bar and you open it up, but it latches when it's closed. And I swear it was latched. Everyone thought it was latched. But when he finally expired, both doors blew open. Now, I'm sure that if it wasn't latched, maybe some sort of combination of doors can but I don't understand how it pushed in the bar and unlatched. But even if there's a natural explanation for that, the timing of it, like right when he passed, and we weren't the only ones in the room. Joel Winters, the worship pastor at the time at Cedar Heights, I think he's at a different church now. My cousin Aaron, other people, my mom, we were in the room, and it was incredible that happened, that these doors blew open and wind came through the room. Yeah,
the timing of it, even if you could explain it somehow, the timing of it.
But that door to the outside was heavy. It's like one of those fire doors. You have to push in the bar and open it. But it was latched closed. But I don't know that wind that we all felt was enough to blow the door open, but the door opened. And so, sure, the naturalistic explanation, fine, but it was the timing of it that really, in one sense, freaked us all out, but in another sense, brought us all comfort. Go figure.
Well, amen.
So I don't know if that counts explicitly supernatural, but it was... But it seemed like a divine encounter nonetheless, right? So,
well, that's amazing. And I see that Kurt Jarris is here, which means that he's going to make fun of our poor technological situation. But Nick Quint wants to know, is the Soterio ban officially over?
Yeah, it's dead. It's long ago. Billy Wendland thought it was a terrible idea anyway because people want to talk about it. Can we have a review of James White? I think James White is a terrible exegete and an even worse metaphysician. That's my review of James White. There are better sources of information out there on everything that he talks about. So my review of James White is don't bother. I think he's incompetent.
You don't get, he said, if not, I'd be settled for a few moments of you being all Pritchett Prime.
Yeah, I just called James White incompetent. I mean, after his last just going off the rails over Leighton Flowers with his fallacious-filled rant and calling him a coward and all this stuff, done. There's no unless he publicly apologizes for his behavior, I have no reason to show him any respect or deference whatsoever, regardless of what people make of me for saying that out loud. Simply, I don't have any respect for the man, and I never really respected much of his scholarship either. I mean,
I like James White.
I know you do, but
I don't like him on soteriology. I like him when he does other stuff.
Like what? Islam? David Wood, who knows what he's talking about, says he's not that great on Islam. So what else you got?
Contra what you have said recently, I think for a guy like him to go up against Bart Ehrman on the manuscript
and
history, I think he held his own. I can't say he clearly lost.
Well, I can.
Well, I was impressed with that because that's not his specific area. I thought that was great.
Well, so I think here's how you know he lost. He thought about pursuing a PhD in Islamic studies and then stopped and decided to pursue a PhD in textual criticism. And then I think it's because he got hammered by Bart Ehrman on that very topic. He bit off more than he could chew going up against Bart Ehrman. But again, and you might say that's just you don't like James White. No, number one, he just stumped back on, well, we have different starting presuppositions about the Bible. And second, James White speaks impeccable German, knows German, reads, writes, speaks German. Very good. When asked about German scholarship on textual criticism, I've never read any of it, but I'm not debating the issue with Bart Ehrman. But James White's like, no, I've never heard or read those people. And I'm thinking, okay, that just shows you don't know the field that you're talking about. Because in other areas, we have to read German scholarship, whether it's translated or not, in certain fields. So, I mean, it's just kind of like...
You can knock this off the table.
For someone who's competent in German, not to be prepared for that kind of stuff, I thought it just made him look like he didn't really know.
The thing is, you don't get as primed as you used to. Like, we have videos from 2 years ago where you'd be talking... I just gave him a Mickey Mouse C-3PO so that if he could get mad enough, he could knock it off the desk, because that's what used to happen.
No, but he asked about James White, and ever since that rant from his video against Leighton Flowers that I thought went too far, no, I'll just say what I really think. I've never been convinced by if you want good Reformed scholarship, you go to our Facebook group and I give a list of recommended Calvinist scholars.
Yeah.
But he makes terrible exegetical cases, and then he'll start spouting off all these crazy metaphysics that he reads into the text and says, see? And I'm like, no, don't see.
All right, so now, that was great.
Yeah.
Good job. Well done. So
I just don't think he knows what he's talking about.
Then we come to Andrew asks a question about how do you get people to be evangelistic that aren't wanting to be evangelistic and get comfortable talking to others about their faith. And, here's the thing. Whenever I go to these conferences and speak, I usually talk about the inclusion of evangelism and apologetics, and I always tell them right from the start, well, it's difficult because on the one hand, you're wanting to take this over here that people are scared to death of and don't think they can do, and then you're giving them this over here that people don't think they can do and they're scared of, evangelism and apologetics, and you're putting them together and saying, how about this new thing? Right. That's terrifying to people. So I think the same thing is true for evangelism just in general, that's true for the inclusion of apologetics and evangelism, which is people are typically scared of two things. They're scared they're going to say something wrong and maybe confirm someone in their unbelief, or they're scared they're not going to know how to answer something. And the best I've seen is encouraging people that if they don't know the answer to something, then just say so. And if they're giving an answer and they're not sure, say, I'm not sure. And I've said it many times on this show, just say, I don't know. And then go find the answer and come back and continue the conversation with them. As long as you're willing to say, I don't know, there's nothing to be scared of. And I think encouraging people that way is one of the best things. And also encouraging them that, we should be evangelistic.
Yeah, I mean, at minimum, you can invite people to just come to church,
Yeah, and that's fine.
If it's an evangelistic church.
You should do that, but I think we should go further.
We were asked a similar question, and I think people should be willing to have conversations, but I mean, for the most part, I don't think every single member in the church needs to be intentional about evangelism 24/7. I just don't. I think
I don't think
I agree with Paul. Mind your own business and keep quiet.
I don't think any individual in the church, even the most skilled evangelist, is going to be evangelistic 24/7.
Except your dad. When any restaurant I've ever eaten at, your dad, the waitress, the hostess.
But I think
the gas station attendant, your dad is intentionally evangelistic.
I think every Christian should be aware of spiritual conditions around them.
Yeah.
Try to be aware and look for indications about the spiritual situation of the people in their lives and the people that they meet. And I think they should be capable of doing it. Now, I'm more staunch about this than I know you are.
Yeah.
However, I will say this much: some people have, anybody can teach provided they know something, but then there is teacher, right?
Right.
And in the same way, anybody can be evangelistic provided they know how they got saved and are saved. But then there's evangelists, and for those of us who are evangelists, I cannot get comfortable sitting next to someone for a long period of time if I know or don't believe that they're a Christian without addressing that. And I know that's not everybody. As an evangelist, I feel like that should be everybody, but I realize that I'm an evangelist. Brother Alvin Pollard, who died last fall and was my children's church pastor, I remember one time he said, often I do share my faith, say with a waitress or somebody. Sometimes I don't. And I got really convicted about that or felt guilty. I won't say got convicted, until I realized that sometimes maybe I just don't experience the prompting of the Spirit in a particular moment.
Yeah.
And I thought, that's fair enough.
What do you think about Daniel? Should it be dated to the 2nd century BC? Which parts of it? You talking about the additions to Daniel that are in the Apocrypha? Sure. Talking about the original Daniel, do you think it should be dated into the 2nd century?
You're the biblical scholar here.
Well, all I can say, one of the books that I agree with you ought to get you ought to get his dad's commentary on Daniel. He goes off about this, but actually, no, I don't. I think there's enough there that you can. The thing is, when you think about composition of biblical manuscripts, including the prophetic books in the ancient world, but no, I think that whatever its final form is, I think the bulk of the content of the canonical book of Daniel that you have, I think there's enough there that you can date it. I hate to say the tradition of it back to Daniel, but I'll say it like that.
Okay, here's a last question.
Because prophets had prophetic circles. You don't talk about it, but when you study, prophets, there was guilds. There's prophet guilds. There were schools for training. All of this other things, right? That's why the famous statement from Amos. I'm not a prophet or the son of a prophet. You're like, but wait a minute, he's one of the minor prophets. How is he not a prophet? Well, the background to that statement is that he's not the son of a particularly prominent prophet, or is he a member of a guild, or did he go to one of these prophetic schools? Because they actually had these things in Israel, okay? Mm-hmm. And so every prophet would also have kind of an entourage or when I say community, it sounds like what the liberals say about things, but he would have an entourage of people. So people ask me, did Amos write Amos, or did Amos's followers? And my answer to that question, yes, to all of the above. So I don't see why I would, but I think there's enough there with Daniel that you can date it prior to the 2nd century BCE.
Okay, last question, and it's in 2 parts. Eric Hernandez asks,
who cares what Eric asked?
Is there what doctrine, and he's assuming it's a doctrine we do not affirm, which doctrine would you do away with? Like, you could just ask God and he would that doctrine doesn't exist anymore, there's nobody teaching that. And what doctrine?
Which true doctrine?
No, not true doctrine. What I think he means, because he said obviously maybe one you don't affirm. So what thing is a doctrinal position that you would do away with? Like, for example, would you do away with Calvinism? Would you do away with open theism? Would you do away with what doctrinal position would you do away with? And is there one that you think is particularly damaging?
What would I do away with? Probably cessationism.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. And
do you think that one is particularly damaging?
On the whole, I would say that, yeah.
I think he means, and I'm trying to think about it for myself, because obviously
I'm not
there are a
saying
lot
is
of
it damaging
things.
for you. I'm saying, is it damaging for the church global?
Yeah. I think there
church universal.
I think there are a lot of things that are damaging that are clearly false doctrine. But I'm imagining that he means that are
Something
within the
umbrella,
realm
yes.
of orthodoxy.
Yes.
Yeah, that's tough.
Yeah, so for me, cessationism, and I think it's also the most damaging. Calvinism is a problem in churches, denominations like the SBC, where you can be one or the other, and it doesn't matter. So,
Would some kind of works-based salvation? I don't know. It's a really good question, because people often ask what book of the Bible if you found out one of them was not, shouldn't be in the canon. But I've never had anyone ask that question. I would want to really get this right, because this is a powerful, if God asks me what I get to choose, one doctrine to do away with, that's a big question.
You mean like everyone becomes this?
Everyone stops being that anyway.
Right. And mine, I would say cessationist. And bear in mind, I say this as someone who has no cool superpowers as far as speaking in tongues or healing or prophecy or any of that. I have none of that. Me personally, but I still think cessationism is a huge problem. Why not egalitarianism? Just wipe that off the planet.
Because if
you don't think it's that dangerous?
Well, there are a lot of people in my life who are very convinced of it, of egalitarianism. And I do not, for the life, and I said we weren't going to talk about this.
He sits next to me and stares and says, wow, how do you believe that, Pritchett?
No, I know how you get there. I've read the literature on it. The thing about it is, I so can't bring myself to actually believe that's what's being said, that I can't get there. But the very fact that there are people like you who really are convinced of this, and Keener and others, where's Witherington on this? Egalitarian?
Oh, yeah.
So that is, I mean...
So when all the best New Testament scholars are and yes, the best New Testament
So I wouldn't throw it
scholars,
out. I mean, I don't want to just do away with something just to be lazy. We're talking about doing away with something that is really dangerous.
Yeah.
Or is dangerous in some measure. I don't know. I mean, if we expand it outside of orthodoxy, it's easy.
Yeah. Oh, I don't think Eric
he wouldn't ask that question.
An easy question. Yeah. Yeah. Let's get rid of just deism out of Christianity. Advice: if your current church will not allow you to teach apologetics, whatever.
I said those were the last questions.
Well,
he's just giving advice. If your church won't let you do apologetics, then what? Leave that church?
Or engage your gifting in a church. Provide a reason. Yes, it's personal. Yeah, I say. I don't. I'd leave the church, because I would never be a member of a church that didn't allow everyone in the church to exercise their gifts within the church.
Yeah.
If your church is say no to teaching a small group this apologetic stuff, I don't know that I would stay at that church, and I don't know that I would actually recommend anyone else stay at that church.
Yeah. All right. Well.
Prime
all right.
says.
All right, so now we've come to this moment. We've been at this for 55 minutes. We should probably bid you all adieu. Thank you for being a part of this.
This was fun, but we need to actually wrap up the...
What
was the one good thing about, or the one best case against objective truth? And they, like we said at the beginning, it was all bad, but the best that I found...
That things are only true relative to something else.
Yes. But that amounted to an equivocation fallacy, that if the truth that Braxton Hunter is 6 foot
is
relative to Braxton Hunter being 6 foot, and it's not, that's relativism, and that's just an equivocation fallacy on the word. And I thought, wow, why would we even argue?
There's
nothing there.
If a real objective truth does not exist, then talking about it is meaningless.
Yes.
You can't even disaffirm it.
Right.
So, all right. So, check out the other episode or other shows on the Trinity Commission.
Steve Gregg's Narrow Path, the Bible Bro-Down with Matt Chisholm and Billy Windland, and we have Leighton Flowers, of course, for soteriology. I'm having to think about these things. Leighton Flowers on Soteriology 101. And, yes, there are new shows coming and new programs coming. And we will be happy to announce them with great fanfare when they...
And if you're listening to this as an audio-only recording, we would appreciate any support you can give us, financial support. You can do that at patreon.com/Trinity Radio. And if you're watching, not you that are watching on Facebook, but those of you who are watching this as a YouTube video, you can click up here somewhere, and there should be a thing that lets you go to a place that lets you give
And
stuff.
Brax is going to edit out everything, so you should have watched the Facebook Live thing.
I don't think I'm going to edit
He's going to
anything.
edit the studio falling apart around us.
No, that's great. I'm going to leave it. But if we took down all the pieces of that plank shiplap wall over there and slowly put in new pieces of shiplap gradually over time,
Would it be the same
Would it be
shiplap?
the same shiplap wall?
Not at all.
All right. Thanks for sticking with us, and we'll see you next time on Trinity Radio.
Yes.
This is the last word.
Sin and excuses. When a man falls into a sinful snare and cannot shake it off, he associates with others ensnared in a like manner. They become a community of ignorantians moving up and down the street, in and out of shops with the equivalents of bear traps clasped around their ankles, teeth beneath the skin. Each dragging their own snares, limping as they go, they conduct their business and attend dinner parties. Others look on them with confusion and try to convince them of their maladies, but they speak with baffling condescension. They've grown to love their snares. They decorate them and compare them and pity those who do not have them. All the while, they are slowly dying. These ensnared men and women who knew the Scriptures best find security in the community. They look around them and say, this must be the truly enlightened spirituality. Regress they have back to the toddler. In such a state and with such biblical knowledge, the twisting and grid crafting becomes most intricate. Men who know the Bible the best and fall in with men who live it the least are capable of twisting Scripture softly, which is truly the worst.
If you would like more content, click here and keep watching Bible studies. Click up here. And finally, we want you to subscribe. We need more subscribers, so click here.